Welcome into another edition of the Old North State Sports Show, folks. We're back with more daily news on the Carolina Panthers. And to kick things off, we got to start out with some recognition for Robert Hunt making his first Pro Bowl. Hats off to him, like seriously. And I mean that like complete sincerity. Great job. Panthers now have two Pro Bowlers in J.C. Horn and Robert Hunt. But it's important to recognize Robert Hunt, man, because he, to me, deserves to be a captain on this team. And I know you're limited with how many captain patches you can give out, and it's voted on by the players and all those things. But this guy is good, man. And I am glad. I know the game has changed. It's the Pro Bowl games, tug of war. I don't even know what they play, to be honest. But this is a really good recognition. Probably also means a nice payday. That's usually what happens when with these things have them baked into their contracts. So hats off to him. And if you missed the video where we went through recognizing Robert Hunt, I did want to take a second to call this out. He has a 77% run block win rate, second in the NFL for an interior offensive lineman. This guy is good. Not just good, he's great. He's a fantastic football player, and I'm glad that we have him here in Carolina. Job well done to Robert Hunt. Now, trading back with the number 8 pick is a topic that has come out quite a bit, and it's a video that I'm going to be making. I made quite a few videos on this, but today I wanted to go straight to the source, or at least as close to the source as I could. And we're going to get a statement here in just a second from Dan Morgan, who spoke to Mike Kay of the Charlotte Observer at one of the Senior Bowl events. And so, one, if you don't subscribe to the Charlotte Observer, no, I'm not paid by them, but please subscribe. These people are fantastic. Charlotte Observer, for all your Panthers content with Alex Zetlow, Mike Kay, Joe Person of The Athletic. I know there's tons of other folks. Keep Blitzing, Carolina Blitz, their whole crew. I mean, I can't name everyone in one sitting, but I would recommend following those folks because they are right there in the trenches, getting the interviews, asking the questions. But let's throw it up here and get the perspective from the one and only Dan Morgan. So, on the possibility of trading back, this was the statement from Dan Morgan. I think everything's on the table, like I always say, Morgan said via, of course, Charlotte Observer. Obviously, depending on who's on the board at number 8, that's always going to be an option to trade back. And I think it should be. I fully agree with trading back because if you get into a scenario where Abdul Carter's gone, Mason Graham, Ted McMillan, heck, I don't even know. Maybe there's another player that you have highly on your board. You assume some quarterbacks are going to be gone. Travis Hunter likely gone. I'm a fan of it. The Panthers, again, have too wide of a gap between pick number 8 and then pick 57 late in the second round. So to me, anything they can do to move back, whether it's 4, 5, 6 spots, maybe later, mid the first round, and then you get an early second rounder as well, maybe even something else. I'm a fan. And if you're trying to wrap your head around what are the trade possibilities, and folks, I'm fine with you using whatever platform you want to use to simulate a draft. But you got to keep in mind that a lot of those trade offers are just not realistic. I put together a video that's going to be released that will break down some reasonable trades that likely could be accepted if the Panthers were to move back. The other thing you have to consider when thinking about trading up, a lot of people think quarterback, so it's got to be a quarterback needy team. That's not always the case. Could be a team that wants to draft an offensive tackle, not a need for the Panthers. There's a good chance some good offensive tackles are still available. And if you don't have that game wrecking player that's sitting right there, it may make sense for the Panthers to move back and get another edge player later in the first. I do think the Panthers should lean defense. I'm also putting another video together to highlight that, so you can expect that coming in probably the next week or two, sooner than in 2 weeks, next week. Working on that content right now. analyzing draft picks from the last 3 years and taking a look at defensive players and the efficiencies or lack thereof for guys drafted early versus wide receivers. And which position can you wait on? Which position can you draft a little bit later and still have a potential to have a successful hit rate? So there you go. Now, all this talk about the bowls and the senior bowls. Let's talk about some players to watch at the Reese's Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. And I believe Mike K's at the East West Shrine Bowl in Texas. This list was provided directly from Panthers.com. So you can go out there. I recommend, again, as we talk about Darren Newton, Cassidy Hill, follow those folks. And I said Newton, Darren Gant. I confused David Newton, Darren Gant. Please, I did not plug Newton when we went through this. Y'all know. Anyways, all right, let's jump back into this. Players to watch. Number one, Tyrion Ingram Dawkins and 6'5", 280. And we're starting to get the Reese's Bowl measurements. I don't know if NFL Draft Buzz has the most updated measurements, but it was tweeted out today. Unfortunately, they don't make it very efficient for you to check the numbers, but there was a website. It might have been 33rd Team. It was somebody out there that compiled all the numbers in one view for you. So if you've not had a chance to do that, but a big name, a lot of defensive players. He was formerly the number one recruit out of South Carolina. You can see here, went to Georgia. Didn't have a great year, but he definitely has the size to play on the outside at the NFL. Again, you're going to see a lot of edge outside linebacker position players. And it makes sense considering that is just a huge need. I mean, if you think about it, it's really DJ Wonnum and Jadeveon Clowney. I don't know that how much you can count on DJ Johnson coming into this next year. Not to mention, it's just like one of these positions where the Panthers likely can draft and also bring in a free agent. So I think we're going to see a potential for some double dip. But Shamar Stewart, 6'6", 290, another big body out of Texas A&M. Again, small production, but I still look at some of these guys, and you may not be looking in particular at a first or second round talent. It could be third, fourth, fifth round later into the draft. Another one that is on a lot of boards in the first round, maybe second, is Nick Scowerton out of A&M as well, 6'4", 285. He had 5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 37 tackles on the season, 4.7 speed. So a lot of these guys, you can see the 3 that they're looking at so far, or at least that they've mentioned on here, are pretty big guys. I know there's a lot of smaller frames, a lot of more hybrid, faster edges and defensive ends that may be in the mix. But to me, you can't go wrong picking anyone, not just anyone, but anyone across the defensive front, because to me, that's just a need the Panthers have to address. Prince Umanamalen, and man, I watched a video on how to pronounce this right before I recorded this, so I apologize. He's a name that's creeping up a lot of boards. He's a name that I do think is in play for the Panthers at pick 8 or at a trade back scenario in the first. 6'4", 255, smaller, as far as weight, 10.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 37 tackles, 4.68, 40 speed. He's a guy that transferred to Ole Miss, had a really good year, a breakout year that's put him in conversation to be one of the top edges taken off the board. I think NFL Draft Buzz has him as the second edge prospect that's available. So you never know. Absolutely. A little smaller. Another thing that I would like to say too, I saw someone online talking about some of the sizes, the weights that came out for these guys. Like, oh yeah, he'll easily be able to throw on 10, 15, 20 pounds. It is not easy. You think about plateauing. It's not like these guys can just go out and eat a whole box of Twinkies and maintain weight. And, you have to build muscle mass weight. And that's not just something you throw on. It's going to take time. I mean, you think about Bryce Young's playing. I remember when I was in high school, I had a guy who was getting recruited by D1 for as an offensive lineman. He spent all day eating so that he could get to the 300-pound mark. So, on paper, it'll look a little bit better if someone were to come in and recruit him, which he did, made it to Elon. Shout out to him. But I don't think it's as easy as people think to just throw on weight. So a lot of edge defensive line. We also have safeties, and I think that's an important position group when you look at really every key safety that started for us as a free agent. So Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame, really like him as a football player. 6 interceptions, 8 passes deflected, 67 tackles, 4.49 40 speed, 6 foot 203. And Malachi Moore, another safety out of Alabama, 6 foot 198, 2 interceptions, 8 passes deflected, 70 tackles. There's no doubt when we talk about the safety position that the Carolina Panthers are going to have to address safety. It'd be nice to draft one and bring in a free agent. I don't know that we'll bring back any of the guys that were here this past year. So it's up in the air. But, anyways, folks, as always, that's going to do it for your Panthers news today. This is Carolina Dad, and thanks for tuning in to the Old North State Sports Show.